started. Thanks everyone for joining us. As Ashley mentioned, today I'm going to talk about the newest iteration of the CMMC solution that we've recently released in Microsoft Sentinel. My name is Lili Davoudian, and I am a Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft Defender for Cloud team. Today, I'm going to share a little bit about the updates that we've made to this solution and some of the new features and functionality. I'll also walk through a demo. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to answer them live. We have a great team looking at all of your questions, and if we have time at the end, I'll also address them and share more demos as we have time for. So let's start by talking a little bit about CMMC 2.0. So CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. It was recently condensed from 5 levels of maturity, ranging from basic to advanced down to 3. So it's really been streamlined across the foundational, advanced, and expert. As a result, we've updated our solution to be more in line with the updated framework. CMMC is really relevant for customers in the DoD space, and especially DoD contractors, which are commonly referred to as the defense industrial base. This is really a framework that helps the defense industrial base understand how to safeguard data when they think about contracts and relationships that they have with the Department of Defense. That being said, we have seen a huge rise in the maturity of attackers and the number of attacks across industries. And so CMMC is a really great starting point for customers, no matter what industry you're in or you support, to really think about how you're safeguarding data and what guardrails you have in your environment to drive security holistically. So the solution that we shipped over a year ago now really focused on CMMC Model 1, and we've made a lot of really great updates to align to this new model and also based on feedback from this community. So I'm very excited to share more about that today. And what that really results in is a one-stop shop, a single pane of glass for building, designing, monitoring, and responding to your misconfigurations and being able to build an environment that takes into account the CMMC Model 2.0 and helps you drive security in relation to that. So let's talk a little bit about what's changed, because I would imagine that many on the call are familiar with the initial solution that we shipped again almost a year ago. The most exciting part beyond the changes to the CMMC framework are the feedback we've gotten from this community. So as I mentioned, CMMC mostly pertains to the defense industrial base, but we have users, a really robust international community of over 5,000 users who has been coming into the solution and giving us feedback. And we've taken a lot of the suggestions from this group and used that to make the solution better. So hopefully, as I kind of click through what's changed, you may recognize some of them based on inputs from people on this call, which is very exciting. We're always looking at ways to improve the solution based on the user feedback and making sure it's as impactful as it can be. And we have a really strong base of practitioners who have used this product, who have helped us build it to really maximize the value to our end customers, and we're super excited about that. We've also just made it a much more robust solution. So we've updated the workbook, which is really that starting point, that dashboard visualization that helps you kind of build and design your environment. But we've also updated the analytics rules, which are there for monitoring and reporting. We've streamlined that down to 2 analytics rules to kind of minimize noise, to help you prioritize what's important. And we've also added playbooks, because one thing we hear time and time again is that given the volume and sophistication of attacks, we need to automate what we can and save our SecOps teams and our security professionals to do that kind of higher value work that isn't repeatable and maybe not automated. So we've tried to build in automation to make it easier for your team. I come from the Defender for Cloud team, and we've seen such strong integrations with Sentinel, and we've really seen those two products mature. And I'm so excited to see how that's kind of come out in the solution, and hopefully you'll see the compliance assessment that's coming from Defender for Cloud has really come a long way in the past few years. We've become much more robust, and we've also improved our remediation capabilities. So you'll see all of that in the solution. And as you can see kind of in this top corner, we have a survey built into the product, and we read every piece of feedback that we get, and I'll show that in the demo. And truly the majority of the great changes have come from the feedback from this group. So we're very grateful for that. I want to talk a little bit about the Microsoft compliance ecosystem before we jump into the solution, because at Microsoft, we have a very rich grouping of products that can help you on your compliance journey, and they're almost like puzzle pieces, and I want to talk a little bit about how they play together. So the Service Trust Portal is a great starting point to think about how Microsoft is implementing controls and processes that protect our cloud services and the customer data that we store in those cloud services. So that's a great starting point when you start to think about compliance and your posture therein. From there, M365 Compliance Manager helps you meet policy and regulatory compliance initiatives and really reduce the risk in your environment. It's a great starting point for customers who are looking to drive compliance of their workloads. From here, for example, you can enable Defender for Cloud. Defender for Cloud has a built-in workload protection platform called Azure Security Benchmark. We also have other compliance frameworks like NIST, PCI, HIPAA that are natively built into Defender for Cloud. And this allows your organization to very quickly understand your security posture, to harden your attack surface, and minimize the likelihood of threats. And we really bring all of this together with Microsoft Sentinel. So Sentinel is our SIM source solution, and it really helps bring in logging over time to get a holistic view of your security posture. We do continuous monitoring so that you can understand gaps. You can do that proactive visibility and remediation, and this is where the CMMC workbook and solution really lives. So when we think about the solution content, again, the initial offering was launched over a year ago really as a workbook. And if you're familiar with Sentinel, a workbook is a dashboard visualization that lies on top of your data. And based on the community feedback, we really turned this into a full feature offering. So we have analytics rules that help you monitor your environment without having to be eyes to glass at all time. We provide the monitoring and reporting through these two rules that measure your posture relative to the foundational and advanced tiers of CMMC. Again, we reduced that down to just two rules based on feedback so that we can make sure we're continuously monitoring your environment without being too noisy. We've also added a few playbooks, which is really where the SOAR capability of Sentinel comes in. And what this comes together as is really a turnkey offering that helps you build, design, implement, monitor, and respond in a way that's really thinking about the updated CMMC architecture and securing your environment from the bottom up. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits, and then I'll jump into the different pieces of the solution, and we can see the demo as well. So the workbook is really there to give you the visualization across your Microsoft and third-party ecosystem of your environment as it relates to the CMMC controls. So this is really helpful for compliance professionals, for your security architecture, your SecOps teams to get that situational awareness and that visibility into the security posture of your workloads as it relates to CMMC. We use Microsoft Defender for Cloud to do a policy-based assessment here, and where we see drift or where we see misconfigurations, we will provide remediation that can help your analysts kind of do that monitoring and response all from one pane of glass. One of my favorite features within the solution and something we are always getting positive feedback about is this print to PDF feature, where you can very easily turn the Sentinel workbook into a report that you can build into your roadmap, that you can share with decision makers for situational awareness. So we've tried to make this very dynamic and something that different players across your organization can leverage and benefit from, whether or not they're eyes to glass in Sentinel. We also recognize that customers have made investments in Microsoft and in third-party ecosystems. And what we care about is really protecting your environment and letting you bring in that third-party tooling so that you can get a consolidated story regardless of where your assets may reside or what tooling you're using. So you'll be able to see kind of your multi-tenant, multi-cloud posture, and that's something that we've heard from customers is very important. So we're excited to share that. And again, we're not just building a visibility tool. We're also building in response. So we're monitoring your environment over time. We're giving you easy remediation and tools for response in an automated, consistent way, so that this is really that single pane of glass, that one-stop shop for building the solution, assessing it over time, and continuously responding to make sure that you're closing any gaps in your posture and driving compliance. The basis of the workbook are what we call control cards. So the CMMC framework has over 200 controls, and each control has their own control card. And this is really a lot of different visualizations of data. An important thing to remember is anything that's light blue like this is a deep link. So at Microsoft, we perhaps notoriously have a lot of portals. We have a lot of really helpful information for enabling our services, but it can be hard to find and hard to navigate. So we've tried to bring all of that into a control or smart card where you can really understand what services you may need to enable, what functionality is required for meeting that control, and we'll not only link you to documentation about it to implement it, but also to the relevant portal. So if Defender for Cloud is a prerequisite, we'll help you read up a little bit about the functionality and also link you to the portal where you can enable it. This is very functionality based. So again, if you're using a different tool than the one we've suggested, we recommend and really welcome that you bring that in and that you're monitoring your posture regardless of what you're using or where your assets may be. We also recognize that customers in regulated industries may be interested in the alignment of CMMC to other regulatory compliance initiatives such as NIST. And so we do have a mapping and kind of a regulatory compliance alignment between CMMC and NIST, which is very helpful for some of our US government customers who are interested in that alignment and that mapping. So again, I'm hoping and assuming that many of you have seen the first iteration of the solution. So I really want to talk a little bit about some of the new features that we've implemented and how that helps make this an even more robust iteration of what we released previously. So the first thing that was very requested by this group is the vulnerability management. So we're using Microsoft Defender for Cloud to assess your endpoint. And when you see a vulnerability, you will have a lot of data related to that asset that you can click in and explore on. Again, you can see these are light blue, meaning they're deep links that will take you directly to the asset. So you can drill down further, you can share this with a decision maker, and we really want to be able to use the data that we get from our vuln management tooling to turn that into actionable insights that you can use to help harden your attack surface and minimize the likelihood of threats. Again, we're hearing that automation is more and more important as the number and sophistication of attacks is rising, and security professionals really need to focus on high value and other attacks. So we've tried to build in some SOAR functionality that will help you kind of understand your trending over time and minimize the load on your security team so that they can focus on other tasks. Conditional access is always something that we found is very important, and beyond just implementing it, we've built in some functionality that helps you monitor your conditional access policies based on the telemetry that we get in Microsoft Sentinel. So you can understand what policies are executing with what frequency, what apps are being accessed, and this really helps you understand your trends and your blind spots. What what is expected and maybe where do we need to build in some additional coverage for security. Security incidents is really based on our desire to have the integration of third-party tooling be as seamless as possible. And so Sentinel is there to really aggregate all of your events into an alert. And when that alert triggers, it becomes an incident. We have made it so that all of your third-party alerts will populate here. So you don't need to set up additional configurations to understand your third-party ecosystem. All of your incidents will be in one pane of glass. Again, light blue means deep link, so you can navigate directly to the incident from the workbook. No need for additional authentication. It's all one pane of glass, and you can investigate more and really be able to see not only the incidents from your Microsoft products, but also from all of your third-party tooling. We've also brought in a lot of the Azure Active Directory insights to get more data on your users and understand how they're accessing the data and how that pertains to CMMC, which has been very helpful. This includes kind of sign-in locations, their trending information, and again, you can pivot directly to the user profile and do some more investigation as needed. So we have brought in a lot of system baselining. This feature is actually from Defender for Cloud. It really is evaluating your endpoint over time and creating a baseline. And if we see things that are maybe weak or vulnerable, we'll recommend that you make a change. This is a great example of how our products have matured, and you can see the M365, Defender for Cloud, Sentinel better together story here, as we've really, brought in that integration across products to share how your system baseline looks over time. And then again, as I mentioned, the posture assessments are policy-based, and these are based on Microsoft Defender for Cloud policies, which we've seen really mature over time, not only in the number and the kind of breadth of coverage, but also in the recommendations that we surface in the portal, how easy it is to see a misconfiguration, navigate directly to that asset, and close the gap and secure your attack surface. And I'll show that in the demo. And then finally, we've brought in this asset inventory feature, which was based on feedback from the community. The thought process here really is you can't secure what you don't know. And asset inventory helps us better understand our environment and what's there. We can pivot directly to the asset. We can pivot to the Azure inventory or M365 inventory portals. So this is really just helping us get a full grasp on everything we have, from VMs, APIs, managed identities. We see customers deploying resources at a faster rate than ever, and we want to make sure you are securing everything in your environment, not just what you know. This is another community feedback. We've added a free text kind of documentation feature where you can add notes either for your auditors, for your leadership team, and these will show up directly in the workbook. And also if you do that print to PDF feature, you can see any notes that you may have added. So this just gives you a little bit more of that ability to customize and make sure that you're able to use this workbook in a way that's best for your organization. So network mapping is another Defender for Cloud feature that really helps you visualize all of your network interactions. And anywhere that you see the red exclamation point, there may be recommendations to help harden your posture. And these are really easy ways to correct misconfigurations and go a long way in improving your posture and minimizing threats there. And then finally, another great better together that we have with Azure Active Directory. This helps you understand where your users are coming from by geolocation, which really, again, just helps you think about how users are accessing your environment, what makes sense given your company or your agency, and where you may need to implement additional things like conditional access or policies to help secure your environment. So with that, I want to transition to the demo-based component and talk a little bit about what all these changes and this new functionality looks like in practice. So the use case that we're going to walk through today is from the configuration management portion of CMMC, and it's about least functionality. So when we think about the different phases of the solution, we always want to start with the workbook. The workbook has the control card, which is really, as I mentioned, that kind of smart card that helps you think about what are the services, what are the logs that I need, how can I implement this, how does it align to things like NIST that I might care about at my organization. And once you're happy with that control in practice and you've implemented either Microsoft or third-party services to help you meet that control, you want to assess it. And that's where we jump in to the assessment phase. We probably don't want to be eyes to glass in the workbook at all times. And so what we've built are these analytics rules that help you monitor your posture over time without having to be in the portal. And we will alert you if your posture falls below a certain percent. So our baseline is once a week, if your posture is below 70%, we will let you know that you need to come in and remediate things to harden your attack surface. And that is completely customizable. If you want it to fire every day, if you want to change the threshold, you can do all of that directly in the solution. But what we've really tried to build here is a way to say, okay, here is my design, here's what I've implemented to meet these various controls, and then let me have Microsoft do the monitoring for me through the analytics rules without me needing to be eyes to glass in the solution at all times. We'll use Microsoft Defender for Cloud's policy assessment to do that continuous monitoring. On top of that, we will notify you either through ServiceNow, through Jira, through DevOps, where we do see misconfigurations, and we will give remediation steps directly in Defender for Cloud. We recognize that with RBAC and separation of duties, you may need to submit a ticket to a different team to make that change securely, and you can do all of that from our response feature. So again, what we've tried to build here is something that goes beyond just giving you visibility to helping you get the end-to-end story and really closing gaps and minimizing the load on your security teams, as we know they're busier than ever. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the demo and see this in action. So here we are in Microsoft Sentinel. I am hopefully zoomed in enough that everyone can see. From the Microsoft Sentinel homepage, if you are deploying this for the first time, please go into Content Hub and search for CMMC. We have retired the previous iteration of this solution. So if you go to deploy a new version, it will be the 2.0 solution. If you have deployed it already, you can navigate to Workbooks and you can search here for CMMC and you can open it directly. If you need an update, it will let you know by sharing kind of an orange tab that says update. So you can see all of that directly. Again, if it's your first time in the portal and you're deploying it from Content Hub, you will get the workbook, the analytics rules, and the playbook all through that deployment. So if we're in the workbook for the first time, I strongly recommend enabling the getting started. We get a lot of questions about this solution, and we've tried to incorporate all of the answers into this getting started page. So take the time to read this, to click on the links. Permissions are extremely important, so understanding what roles might be needed and just getting kind of that context on CMMC if it's your first time is very helpful. We've also included information on prerequisites and things like that. So really recommend coming in here. We also have some parameters at the top that will help you filter this report and make it customizable to your needs. We have the integration with Azure Lighthouse, which is how we view data across tenants. You can also look across subscriptions or workspaces so that you can have this be as broad or as refined as helpful to you. You may see blank panels throughout the workbook. That is not bad. That just means that you may have not onboarded or be licensed to a product that we are using for that control card, or perhaps it may not be healthy. So it's a great opportunity just to look further into the services that we've recommended and make sure that you're properly licensed and that they're enabled. I mentioned a few times the survey that we have. It's right here at the top. It is completely anonymous. We read every single piece of feedback and we incorporate the majority of it into updates to the solution. So if you see something that you like or something that you think is an opportunity for improvement, please let us know. We really value your insights here. In addition to the getting started, we have included some demos and blogs here. So again, if it's your first time looking at the solution, those are great references for getting started. So let's have a look initially at the executive summary. So if I scroll down here, I have the ability to sort by CMMC level. So let's say I want to start by looking at the foundational insights. All of the panels below will populate automatically. Here I can kind of get a high-level view of my posture, and then I also see the policy-based assessment from Microsoft Defender for Cloud, which is very helpful here. So let's scroll down a bit. I'm very zoomed in, but if you scroll, I mentioned that kind of seamless integration with Defender for Cloud. So if you get to a point where there's a recommendation that you want to address, you can deep link into the remediation tab. And again, you'll see this is completely seamless. I'm not being asked to authenticate again. I can scroll down and better understand my resources, whether they're healthy, unhealthy. So here I'm doing pretty well. If I want to deep dive into the log analytics query or better understand the policy that's assessing these resources, I can do all of that. And once I've completed, I can pivot back to the workbook again without any additional authentication. This view is very helpful because you can maybe start by understanding what recommendations are most healthy, where you have the most unhealthy assets, and prioritize accordingly. Another view that is very helpful is recommendations by asset. This will help you understand perhaps which assets need the most help and need the most updates to their misconfigurations, and you can pivot directly at the asset level as well. The recommendations over time is a great way to think about how you're deploying new resources and whether they're healthy by default. So in the ideal world, this is a flat line because we're building in guardrails, whether with Azure policy or things like that, so that when we deploy new resources, they're configured correctly and we don't see our recommendations spike as we deploy new storage accounts that maybe haven't disallowed public access or things like that. So this really helps us think about our roadmap and maybe we can share, a printed version of this to decision makers and say, we need to start building in Azure policy to make sure that new assets are healthy by default. So really these insights help you think about your posture over time and build that strategy into your roadmap. The other thing I want to show is the regulatory compliance alignment. So as I mentioned, if you are in the US government space, it's possible that you're interested in other initiatives like the NIST framework and you want to understand better how CMMC and NIST work together. So earlier we talked about specific examples of controls. If you want, you can search for a control here, or you can just look across them generally and better understand how they align to NIST and also what services are helpful in meeting that control. So we had talked earlier in the slides about least functionality. So there is free text search. If I want to search for that here, I can see how it aligns to NIST. And if I zoom out a bit, I can even see the primary and secondary services that would help me meet that control. So zooming back in, let's jump into configuration management and have a look at least functionality. So here I've selected configuration management. It's level 2. If I scroll down, I can see all of the relevant controls. I can always make this bigger if I want more insight. So if I select least functionality, I drop down into what I was describing as the control card. And again, there are hundreds of these throughout the solution. So at the top here, this is a light blue link, meaning it's a deep link. This can help me understand more information about this control, and I can have a look at the Microsoft documentation. if I want to learn a little bit before I begin implementing. Again, you can see the services that will help you meet this control and the recommended logs. If I'm asking for a service, I'll provide a link to learn more about it, and I'll also link to the portal. Here are some Microsoft Defender for Cloud recommendations that may help me better meet this control. If I feel that these are things that I want to address, I can always scroll and very easily remediate like we did earlier, again, without having to additionally authenticate. I can select all of my unhealthy resources and kind of correct them with just a few clicks. So if I felt like I've done enough to implement this control, I can change the implementation status to implemented. I can also add the date just with free text here. So today I think it's the 16th. I think. And if there are any notes I want to add, again, I have that ability to kind of free text right in here. And this is really helpful, again, if you want to share it with an auditor or with a decision maker. If they are someone who is not coming, eyes to glass in Sentinel, I can easily do a print functionality here, which will help me print to PDF the exact view that I see. And I can take that out of Sentinel and share it. You'll see it fits perfectly kind of within the page. I would recommend turning off dark mode before you print this so that it doesn't use as much ink as possible. But again, the print to PDF is a great way to take the insights that you have with the notes that you've added and the way that you've personalized it and share that with decision makers, with auditors, and really be able to turn this into something that can be used for reporting. So with that, I'll kind of pause for questions. I know we've been answering some in the chat, but if there's anything that hasn't been addressed, happy to share in the demo or talk it through further. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second just so I can have a look at the chat and see.
Here, I can read some questions to you if you'd like.
Sure.
Let's see, the first question we have here is, can we inventory the applications that are installed? Oh. Can we inventory the applications that are installed on endpoints?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you can. So as I mentioned, through Defender for Cloud, we have a very tight integration with MDE, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and you can bring in that visibility through this solution.
Okay, and also, can we implement approved apps, whitelisted apps with this?
I'd like to better understand the question. So if whoever asks it wants to come off mute, or I think TJ is typing a response. So maybe let's jump to the next question. We can come back to that.
Okay. Can we use Microsoft Defender and CMMC in on-premises environment?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So in Microsoft Defender, you can use Azure Arc to bring in all of your on-prem assets. Essentially through Azure Arc, they become Azure resources, and you can either evaluate their posture using some of our regulatory compliance initiatives in Azure Security Benchmark, and you can also enable Defender plans on them. Through the CMMC solution, we also allow you to bring in your third-party and on-prem tooling. So we can do all of that through some kind of customizable configurations. And if you want to reach out after the call, I'm happy to walk through that.
Okay, thank you. And how does this compare to Defender for Identity and Defender for Endpoints servers?
Great question. I wouldn't put this as a comparison. So as I mentioned, in Defender for Cloud, we have a very tight integration with Defender for Endpoint. So we are actually bringing in insights from that tooling, and we also bring in insights from MDI or Defender for Identity. So it's not a comparison. It's something more so of a complementary, where if you do have those tools enabled, we will bring in the insights to Sentinel and use it to better monitor your posture.
Okay, and are recommendations and associated severity linked to the ones in Azure Advisor? Oh, Lili, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. Yes, we use the recommendations for Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and so the severity is in line with what you would see in Azure Advisor.
Okay. The reference NIST 800-53 revision 4 is outdated. NIST 853 revision 5 is in effect now. Wait, sorry. Makes the control show me a problem. I'm not sure I understand how to read the question. So I'll go to the next one. Okay, we already got that. Is there one dashboard with the score of all CMMC capabilities?
Can you repeat the question? Is there one yeah, this is the single dashboard that will help you understand your score across CMMC capabilities.
Okay, and where does this sit with the CMMC templates in Compliance Manager?
Yeah, so Compliance Manager is a really great starting point for thinking about your security posture, but this gives you a drill down into not only the visibility, but also the steps for remediation using the policy-based assessment from Defender for Cloud. So this really helps complement that and give you a further view of not only what is your posture, but how can you improve it using policy.
Okay. And for monitoring servers, does this require P1 or P2 license level to get the most benefit?
Yeah, great question. So there are no hard requirements for this beyond enabling the Defender for Cloud and Sentinel. P2 will give you more visibility because it will include things like MDE, but either will work for basic functionality. If you want to go a little bit beyond and see some of the MDE integrations, we would recommend P2.
Okay. And where can I get NIST 800 mapping file?
So you can see the NIST mapping directly in the solution under the Regulatory Compliance Alignment blade. If that's something that you want to export, you can use the print to PDF functionality in the solution.
And the next question, is this fully available in GCCH as well as commercial tenants?
Great question. This is available across environments. So this is based in Azure Sentinel, meaning that it will live in the Azure environment. So you will see it in Azure, in Azure Gov. And if you're interested in using it in the air-gapped clouds, please reach out and we're happy to support that as well.
And how comparable is the vulnerability management data to active scan data for non-Microsoft software?
I'm not very familiar with the active scan data, but happy to chat more about that offline and we can share what insights we can see using our vulnerability management tooling.
And we're coming up to the last question here. Is there an available Contoso demo for this?
There is a demo environment for this, and happy to kind of chat offline on how you can access that.
Okay, I think we have, let's see, here's one more coming in. Oh. Are we restricted to Azure or can we reach other clouds?
Great question. No, we have built this with a multi-cloud focus. So we encourage you to bring in your assets in AWS and GCP, and we will monitor those as well.
And are there any privacy-related legislations the controls can be mapped to?
We do mapping to other regulatory compliance initiatives. If you can clarify which one you're interested in aligning to, we can address it in the chat.
Is there a DB source, whether local or community-based, for pre-written advanced threat hunting queries?
We do share a lot of threat hunting queries that either we've written or from the community in GitHub. I'm happy to drop a link to that in the chat. Good question.
Thank you. Okay, so we've reached the end of the questions. I was just going to give a few more seconds, see if there was any more coming in. We have a lot of thanks for the great sessions in the chat. Just wanted to let you know that. Okay. Let's see. When will the tool reference NIST 800-53 Rev 5 be available?
Yeah, it's a good question. So today we do our policy assessment based on the Azure Security Benchmark that comes from Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Today that is aligned to NIST Rev 4. We are currently working through the alignment for Rev 5. If you are interested in Rev 5, please let us know and we can do some kind of backend configurations to make that work for your environment.
And what training options are there for this and other Sentinel related services?
Great question. We have awesome training that we have published called, I want to say it's called the Ninja training. I believe it's on GitHub. I'm happy to drop the link. And then we also have more formal Sentinel workshops. If you have an account team at Microsoft that you partner with, I would recommend reaching out to them about a more formal like workshop or session like that. And I'm happy to share the link to the self-guided training that we've put together.
Okay, and I think we may have an answer to the question you asked. Someone dropped in Pipeda in Canada.
For the regulatory alignment. Was that for that question? Yeah, so today I don't believe that that's one that we cover, but we're always looking to add new initiatives to Defender for Cloud. If you want to reach out offline, I'm happy to share that back with our team who focuses on adding new initiatives. We add a few new initiatives every 6 months, so happy to kind of share that back to our team and see if we can build it into the pipeline.
Okay, and we have a couple people in the chat who are interested in Rev 5 now. If I'm new to Sentinel, where should I start to get an overview?
Great question. I believe further up in the chat, TJ posted a docs link to kind of the intro to Sentinel. We can reshare that. There are a few community pages that have awesome kind of self-guided intro to Sentinel that really brings in both docs pages and modules that you can do on Azure. So I would recommend starting there. And I think TJ's just shared the link with you.
I also posted the link to our Ninja trainings for all products we have, so that should help as well.
Great.
Okay, perfect. So we have reached the end of the questions.
Ashley, if I could just add one other thing.
Sure.
If you are, I'm seeing in the chat a lot of interest around NIST. We have actually shipped a solution that focuses only on NIST and how you can better align your environment to the NIST standards and does a very similar to CMMC, but with a NIST focus. I'm going to share the link to that in the chat. So if you're more interested in NIST, that would be another great starting point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So perfect. So thank you, Lili, for being our guest today and for an excellent presentation. And thank you to the rest of the team who helped answer all the questions. Once again, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/security-community. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, Ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your feedback at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you.